Chapter 1, Wayfair welcomes you to the neighborhood. Our hero, Titus Burgess, ambled down the stylish street of an enchanting utopia. A woman waved from a chic lounger. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, "where Wayfair helps everyone create a home they love." Titus stared in awe. Bohemian Boulevard, Trendsetter Terrace, Mid-Century Circle.
Titus, you're reading the Wayfair catalog.
Oh, you'll love Chapter 2. Wayfair's fast and free shipping saves a potluck.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
MSW Media.
Welcome to Feminist Buzzkills Live, the show that joins the resounding sentiment, kiss my Kansas. I'm Liz Winstead, and as always, I'm joined by my beautiful co-hosts, Moji Alawodale.
Hello.
And Marie Khan.
Hello, everyone. Coming up on today's show, we are breaking down that big Kansas win, celebrating, but also examining it as a cautionary tale of what we need to do to truly solidify the fundamental right to abortion.
Plus, as clinics keep closing faster than the Josh Hawley Capitol sprint, the anti-abortion grifters who run fake clinics are getting millions of our tax dollars to open up Christian pregnancy megaplexes. Still providing no medical care, but now with a cappuccino machine. This story is a blood boiler. Plus, it's his birthday today.
Yes.
It's your birthday.
It is my birthday.
I'm so excited for you, Liz. We made it another year.
We did. We made it another trip around the sun as I sit and record this podcast with two of my favorite people and my dog at my feet. It's a good day. It's a good day.
It's a good life.
What are your plans, Liz? What are you doing tonight?
My big plans are I'm going to a Chinese restaurant that has been like an institution in the Twin Cities forever that's about to close, which is really sad. So I'm getting together with some friends for dinner to do that. And then, pool time at my brother's is always part of my birthday strategy. So
that's
that
a nice
will
pool.
also.
It's a very
Marie and I have been at that pool.
Yes, you have. So that is my plan. But you know what? Enough about me. If there could be, let's continue with the promos. Also coming up on the show, have you heard of the Janes? They are a group of young women in Chicago who, before Roe v. Wade, ran an underground network helping folks access abortions. HBO is currently running a must-see documentary about them called The Janes. And Judith Arcana, one of those original Janes, joins us to talk about their work and the parallels and differences of then and now. But before we get to all that, I'm going to do, as always, a quick breakdown of the ever-changing can I or can't I news around abortion access. Let's start with the shit. Well, West Virginia still has a law in the books from the 1830s that bans abortion except where a pregnant person's life is at risk. But a state judge earlier this month blocked it. And so the West Virginia governor was like, special session because injustice was not being upheld. So they are now all together and abortions are probably not going to be legal much longer. So we're waiting to find out what kind of shitty legislation they're going to pass in light of all of this. And it's the worst. Same in Indiana, where, as we talked extensively last week, their garbage ass bill ultimately cleared the state Senate in a 26-20 vote and has to go back to the House. And I just want to point out that 10 Republicans crossed party lines and voted against it, not because it was garbage, because the near total ban didn't go far enough. Yay! Kentucky, sadly, they were holding on with some gum and some string and some old tin cups. And finally, the court said, yep, your trash ban can go into effect, rendering abortions in that state, I believe, non-existent. So that's the bad. But oddly, this is a week where there is more good news than bad news. Must be because it's my birthday. In the city of Atlanta, Georgia, their city council voted to give $300,000 to the ARC Abortion Fund, which is awesome. And recently they approved a measure instructing the cops to treat violations of the state's abortion law as low as priority. Similar in Austin, Texas, they passed the GRACE Act, which also makes enforcing criminal laws the lowest priority for law enforcement. It also decriminalizes abortion by preventing the use of city funds to investigate the procedure. Yay, Pennsylvania. Their Democratic governors sued the state ledge on Thursday over a package of proposed garbage constitutional amendments, one trying to take away the guaranteed right to abortion, just like Kansas, and one that would cut all public funds for abortion. In Michigan, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but a judge blocks their 1931 abortion ban. Man, they want to go back to the fucking future. It's so creepy. Florida, this is sort of awesome. 7 clergy members. This sounds like the beginning of a bar joke. 2 Christians, 3 Jews, a Unitarian, and a Buddhist walk into a lawsuit.
I'm like, I heard this joke and it was racist before.
Yeah, right. But right now, it's pretty dope. So they all got together and they were like, you know what? This bullshit abortion ban in Florida violates our religious freedom, and we are filing a suit together. So we'll see how that goes, which is very exciting. And the Department of Justice takes its first lawsuit on, suing Idaho over Idaho's, it's just, I don't know how far people, it's like, the erections you must get from just being hateful must be really, really tremendous, because Idaho, we had to literally have the federal government finally suing because they were literally not allowing doctors to give patients life-saving medical treatment when they needed abortion. So finally, the nation is stepping in. And then Joe Biden said abortion out loud this week and signed an executive order aimed at helping patients travel for abortions. I have no idea how this works. Every time there's Joe Biden says, I'm here to help, I said I would. I've never understood how it's going to help. I don't know how you can actually help fund abortion and help people travel for abortion when we have the Hyde Amendment in place. None of it makes sense, but Joe Biden, he's trying. Joe Biden's trying this week. And Kansas, which we will get to in depth, is also really just like good, crazy. We need to talk about it. So that's some good stuff. And as always, the links to every single story will be in our show notes. And we always want to remind you that the best and most important up-to-the-minute resource on accessing abortion where you are, or the closest place to you, is ineedana.org. So if you're looking for funding, you're looking for the closest place to access care, ineedana.org is your resource. But I have to say, you talked about my birthday, and the best news that is happening on my birthday today. Do y'all know what I'm going to talk about? Do you know what I'm going to say?
Exactly what you're going to talk about.
Okay.
I'm very excited for you to talk about it.
So excited. So if you follow Abortion Access Front, you know that we, since our inception, have been following around anti-abortion extremists to where they hold their church services, their national conventions, their conferences, because we want to give them a taste of their own medicine where they live. And we do it with a cohort of other activists who are really dope. And this year, they gathered in Nashville last week. And through the diligence of our work on the ground, capturing their every move, following them to clinics, videotaping them breaking the law, and then videotaping them talk about how they were going to break the law at their evening planning sessions, we were able to
I like to call them hate-a-paloozas, but sure, Liz.
I mean, they're planning sessions. They plan, they scheme. They also just like to just talk about their manhood a lot. But because we compiled photographs and videos of all of their garbage and them breaking the law, they were served a restraining order, and they could not and cannot invade or go on the property of one of the clinics in Tennessee. And the great part is today they have to go to court on my birthday. So Operation Save America is in court on my birthday and possibly facing federal charges because of their shit, because of the work of Abortion Access Front and the Jezebel Rebellion and all of the coalition members that were diligently capturing stuff. And I'm so excited. And it's like they were all bragging online holding up their envelopes being like, I can't think of a better group of guys to go to prison with. And it's like, so we doctored up a really nice birthday card for
which
me.
you can find on the AAF Twitter, I believe.
You can. It is
pretty
true.
funny. I saw it. I took it. There was a spit take when I saw it.
I mean, it was really great. And it just makes me endlessly happy because they have tortured us. They have tortured me. Their leader of Operation Save America challenged me to a debate, a public debate. I was like, why would I honor you with my knowledge and validate anything you have to say? I would never. And he was so freaked out and he had mustard on his shirt the whole time. It was a mess. Anyway, so that is happy birthday to me. That is my greatest gift. Unless, of course, you want to make a donation or join our Patreon. That would be an even better gift to keep this activist train going. But until then, let's get to our big stories. Oh my God, everybody heard the news. The state of Kansas has literally freaked everybody out in the nation by overwhelmingly, by a 19-point margin, voted to say, you can take your fucking stupid ass trying to take away our abortion rights in Kansas and shove it where the sun don't shine. And everything I've read, everything I've heard, even from the activists who planned and were organizing around this, said that they had hoped that this sort of libertarian streak that Kansas had would show up at the polls, but people showed up in record numbers. And those record numbers in every single county, the vote no, which is vote no on taking away our rights amendment, performed better than they expected in every single county. So it's really exciting, but it doesn't come without having larger conversations about what this means. We can be excited, but also it's very weird to be coming at this from a strategy of we have to put our rights on the ballot. That already is a setback.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we're behind already. Yep.
Yes. And then watching how people in like counties that voted like 88% for Trump, 20% of those people voted to keep abortion in their constitution, but still voted for Republican candidate or a conservative candidate that voted and will continue to vote for these bans.
It's almost like they don't know where these bans come from. It's almost like they're like, oh, I wonder who's putting forth these bans. I'm just going to vote against bans, but I'm totally going to empower the person who's writing the bans because I'm paying no attention.
Well, also, it shows your privilege, right? It says, I'm for freedom and think people should have abortions, but I know I'll be able to get one someplace. So I'm going to vote for the person who's going to lower my taxes or whatever they believe a Republican attribute is that they want. And so for me, that's immediately a red flag. And also, Moji, I think you're right. Also, I think that's where the work has to be done, right? We cannot secure abortion access for real until we change the hearts and minds of people to fundamentally understand to their core that this is a right that needs to be solidified for everybody who needs it. And until we get to that point, that means saying abortion, right? It's a lot.
Also, again, and I think you brought this up, but I feel like there's not too fine a point on it. Like if we have to vote on fundamental rights of bodily autonomy, we've already lost. We're clawing ourselves up from the mud, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a victory. Absolutely. We can't call anything else. If it was gone the other way, it would be devastating. And then it's also like AAF and MAC and the people we're in coalition with have been yelling about stuff like this for years, decades. And it's like, oh, now that the Dobbs decision has happened and you're seeing what happens in states around you, people are like, oh, wow, this is a problem. Like, can you listen to people before it becomes a problem this bad, right? Like it's been bad. We know it's been bad for people of color. We know it's been bad. The state of access in many states around this country has been distressing, but like people have to see absolute bans to sort of mobilize around this, to care enough to show up in a midterm to talk about it. It's really distressing.
Yeah. And I feel like when I look at the totality of it, and I saw on the news the other night, one of the ads they created for this, and it was an ad about the government shouldn't have control over your freedom and your liberty. And it could have been a Trumpy kind of ad. And then the conversation went around saying, oh, maybe the way to win this is to not ever talk about abortion, and let's not mention abortion. And it's like, if we go back into that rabbit hole of not mentioning abortion, we're going to constantly be begging for rights. We're going to constantly be dancing around an issue. And part of the solidifying bodily autonomy for real and for always is to recenter the conversation about abortion and claiming the moral high ground on it again.
Yes. And the narrative and abortion, not just pro-choice, not just these other euphemisms that don't actually mean anything at the end of the day. Because again, the rights have been taken away.
Yep.
Yeah. And ever since Roe came down, there was a tentativeness, the way it was argued. Privacy is a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fundamental human rights is not. And so I was thinking about Roe, and I was thinking about how living in New York and back in the bad old days in the 1970s, a lot of neighborhoods got really long 40-year, 45-year leases on their restaurants and their cool vintage stores and record shops. And they were like, oh, cool, I got this 40-year lease. Amazing. That's forever. And nobody stayed on top of laws about developers. Nobody paid attention to the encroachment. Nobody paid attention to what gentrification would look like and work towards like city and state laws to make sure that small businesses would be protected and renters and people would be protected. And then what happened? Those leases ran out and everybody was smacked in the face, and all of those restaurants and record stores and vintage stores all closed because we didn't pay attention because we thought we had a lock on something. And it feels like that with our rights, where it's like Roe v. Wade happened and the activists stayed in the game. And then the people who were like, well, we have Roe v. Wade now, just sort of disappeared. And unless people are in this fight for real, always, you cannot expect that this small group of activists, many of whom spend their time 24/7, 365, raising funds to get people to their care or get people care. They can't be doing everything else, you know? Yeah. And so like when I was listening to the coverage of Kansas and listening again to the people who need to take several seats, who are Democratic operatives and strategists and people who haven't been immersed in the movement, they need to just listen to understand. They keep saying things like, isn't it great that these women turned out and did all this and women did this and women did that? And it's like, why are the people who are oppressed by these laws the only ones out there fighting? You should be ashamed that this happened. And if you are a human being who says you're for human rights, if you weren't out fighting for this, if you didn't understand, if you made a choice to not understand what the profundity of these things are, and now we're in panic mode.
Yep.
And just listening to on NPR, and I highly recommend you listen. We'll throw the link in the show notes. The editor-in-chief of the Kansas City Star was just talking, and he's like, you know, this Republican lock that they have in their legislature, they're going to go right back in January and reintroduce this again. And judges, Moji, I know you know, like, isn't there like a lot of judges who are up for re-election?
I think so. One of the reasons that this referendum happened is because in 2019 there was a legal challenge to the Constitution that essentially the 5 judges in the Kansas Supreme Court were like, or maybe 4 of the 5 judges in the Supreme Court. I actually don't remember the exact breakdown, but essentially the majority of the judges in the Kansas Supreme Court said, oh, the Kansas Constitution, in fact, does guarantee the right to bodily autonomy. And so, you know, we know about anti-choicers. If they're nothing else, they're tenacious. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, oh, it's only been 2 years. And then Dobbs happened and they were like, well, let's do this. And let's do it in an off election. And let's do it when everyone's on vacation. And let's make really confusing language. And then, fortunately, everyone's fired up because of Dobbs. And so people are paying attention in the way that normally would. But 4 of these 5 judges are up to be either reelected or recertified. And it's happening, I think, in November. So anti-choicers, they're tenacious. They probably have already started a plan and a war chest to oust these judges and put in extremists similar to the 6 we have on the Supreme Court. So we have to stay vigilant. And I do hope that again, Kansas was a victory. And I think we do have to stay tenacious. We can't get complacent. I'm also seeing punditry being and this is now how the midterms will go. And I'm we can at least acknowledge that maybe pundits don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, 100% for real. And I know we have many stories, so we'll button this one out, but it's just patriarchy doesn't take a holiday. I say it all the time, but it's 24/7. And even if we were to be tenacious and went door to door and had heart-to-heart meetings and got every single person who believed that abortion is a human right and a constitutional right to agree to that, there is still millions and millions of people who will work 24/7, who believe and will fight till their dying breath to end access to birth control and contraception. And those people are never going away, and they work quietly and loudly. So that shit needs to be going away and far and far. So that is that. So moving on to the state of Michigan, because Michigan has had a neck snapping trash heap of a week. Marie, what the hell?
Yes. So in keeping with my ongoing devotion to the Midwest, this week I've been watching Michigan very closely. The Mitten State has 26 public-facing abortion clinics, but also ambiguously seems to be under a 1931 abortion law, a law that not only criminalizes and penalizes abortion, but also miscarriage procurement, which I really think sums up in general what people understand about pregnancy and the lengths that people need to go to get abortion care. But these clinics have been able to remain open, and abortion is still legal in Michigan because before this truly geriatric law could become active, when Roe fell, an injunction got put in place by a judge. And this injunction allowed for more public discussion and actual state-led consensus around abortion access. Now, you're asking, all right, what has changed? Local anti-abortion panty sniffers and county prosecutors have wanted to use this law from the 1930s to be reactivated. They want to be able to go after clinics and abortion seekers. And on Monday, they thought they got their wish because the Michigan appeals court said, oh, county prosecutors, you're not limited by this injunction. But in a lovely twist of justice, also on Monday, a local county judge said nope and issued a temporary restraining order against their own state-level county prosecutors. So that, my friends, is how and why abortion has managed to stay legal in Michigan.
This was a whiplash week for me. I feel like it was
jerk.
You just laid it out really quickly, but I feel like it happened in 2 or 3 days. It was 1 minute, abortion's legal, not in some counties. I feel like, providers we know were we're moving everyone to this other county.
Yep. Monday was wild. We were talking to our Michigan provider friends who were literally shuffling patients around and getting them from one county to another county because now abortion's legal in separate counties.
Yep.
It was wild. And so
it's door-to-door access. You know what I mean? Abortion access is literally done door to door. I don't know. What's your zip code? Okay, there. Yep. Right. But across the street, no, sorry.
Well, and they're waiting for the Supreme Court, and Michigan also has their state Supreme Court to weigh in on. I think they're doing it next week. Yeah. But they also have a ballot initiative to get rid of this shit ass law. And the good news is they had to get 450,000 signatures. They got 750,000. So right now they are checking the validity, and I'm sure that there's 450,000 valid signatures. But
it'd be really funny if they found half of these are invalid. Half.
I know.
Oh, but there's still enough. Half could be invalid, and it's still enough.
It's still enough. So so that will go on their ballot in November. And yet again, we're on the ballot for our rights. It's wild. And also, I firmly believe that if you want to fucking live in 1931, or 1830 or whatever the fucking year you want to keep these laws on the books, then you should have to do everything that you can only live in those worlds. That's it. It's like this old house. You just have to live in 1931. You can't enjoy anything that happened after that. Just live it. Churn your butter, get an ice box, drive a DeSoto, don't get on the internet, die in a fire.
Yep.
I need to not see you on Twitter if 1930 is your goal year. I need to not see you on Twitter.
I know, it's true. So, I mean, that's good news. Marie, thank you for that. But also, Marie, that's not even the only thing that happened in Michigan this week.
Yes, this is really fucked up. It didn't make a lot of headlines. So during all of this, there was a fire at a clinic. On Sunday, Kalamazoo, Michigan, their Planned Parenthood, it was targeted brazen broad daylight by an arsonist. Thankfully, folks arrived to put the fire out. It was really fast and it was extinguished and there was only a little bit of roof damage. No one was physically harmed. But I mean, that's unfortunate. That's like, it's fucked up. It's a regular occurrence now we're seeing. And
but also was there any mention from either the right spray paint terrorism
did not thoughts and prayers, the Kalamazoo Planned Parenthood. Nope. No.
And even Biden, who was like,
did Biden speak out against it?
Nope.
I mean, and this is what happens. The vandalism and the harm that goes to abortion clinics constantly never gets checked. And like, if you didn't know that story, we put it in our show notes, but like, this is the thing. It's stacked against us. And next week, we're going to be talking about why it's stacked against us in the 1996 Telecommunications Act and how that has to do with abortion. And this is the kind of shit that like is really scary when you have a media that can gobble up other things. The stories that they want to tell are the stories they want to tell. And
for
none of
20
those stories
minutes,
are ours.
For 20 minutes, we had to hear about literally any fake clinic that got any sort of like script-based graffiti.
Yes.
But you can, whatever, you can just do arson on a clinic and nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
Nobody wants to talk about it. It's a mess. I know. It's really just like, it's just wild. That's where we're at, but, and also, one of the things that we will be continuing to talk about is what are their plans? It's like the volleying back and forth of which state has access, which state isn't, is just this ongoing nightmare. But what are the bigger plans? And Moji, you have discovered some of their bigger plans and what they're doing. And it's just all the worst.
It's all so terrible. So like, okay, good news. So abortion warriors, that's us, I count us, have been rightfully celebrating raising over $2 million to fund abortion because Matt Gaetz is an asswipe. Can we agree?
Oh, yes.
You can get an amen.
State governments are handing millions of your tax dollars to create these sleek anti-abortion shame spas. That's right. Non-medical facilities whose sole purpose is to lie, cheat, or steal people away from abortion options. These state-of-the-art fake clinics are designed specifically to both distract people from finding a real clinic and keep them from finding real care. One of them that we were reading about in their design includes a man cave so that inseminators can be counseled about marriage while playing pool.
Because, it's good to not have focus while you're deciding whether or not you want a parent.
To marry, right? Like this is basically like the idea is like the pregnant person, probably a woman, because these are very Christian places. They don't believe in more than two genders.
Oh yeah, these aren't queer couples going in. No.
These are not queer. Queer couples would like smell the harm a mile away. But like, so women are basically somewhere being counseled for being slutty harlots. And then the man is playing pool and being told, marry that their slutty harlot. Like, what the fuck? Anyway. And this is money. A lot of states have sort of basically earmarked money that could be going to a lot of helpful things. I know in Texas alone, it's like $100,000 over the next 2 years to just.
You mean 100 million?
I meant 100 million. That is exactly what I meant. And thank you for correcting me, Liz, because I get dizzy about numbers.
Yeah.
To give to these fake clinics, these places that just say, no, you should have that baby. So this is infuriating on its own. But then it turns out that these states that are funding these just say no cappuccino clinics, they don't have any interest in funding programs to help the person who they talk out of their abortion, right? And this is happening around the country. But again, I like to focus on Texas when I can. It's the fuck you state of reproductive rights. And they may be the worst. Get this. Texas requires a single mother of 2 children to make less than $188. That's not $1 million or $1,000, just 188 a month in order to receive any sort of financial help that could be some form of welfare. That means if you make $200 a month, and again, we're at 200, Texas is like, oh, you're fine. You can totally take care of those babies on your own. You don't need our help when you're making less than $12,000 a year. Anyway, this is terrifying. And they're doing this while sitting on, again, in Texas, $280 million in unspent dollars from the federal government that have been specifically earmarked for needy families. And this is not just Texas, right? I focus on Texas because they're just such an easy, huge red target. They're a big state. They, in theory, there's so many people in Texas, right? There's a lot of people that are being harmed in Texas. But other states include Maine and Tennessee and Hawaii, and there's more to the list. And they just have these millions of dollars that the federal government has given them to help families in poverty, and they just don't help families in poverty. But what they will do is give millions of dollars to promote anti-abortion lies in a white Herman Miller chair.
You know, it's so offensive to say you can't have welfare, and yet they just don't spend that welfare money. And my guess is that 280, that cool 280 mil that they're sitting on will eventually go to these fucking cappuccino fake clinics.
Or other programs that are not helpful, right? Like job education programs, right? So you just pay people to teach people work. People know how to work when they can work, right? People don't work usually because they are caring for children or have injuries. There's a lot of reasons that most people want to work if they can. So like, instead of giving people money, because that's what people need to live, you just want to give money. I'm sorry, this is my rant. I'm getting off subject. Fucking ridiculous. Then also Texas and other states allow these stupid fucking concepts that like seem straight out of a 1950s playbook. Maternity ranches. You remember this story?
Yes. Oh my God, the maternity ranches where you have to basically be in indentured servitude.
Yeah.
And you have to do gardening and take care of the house and be there and stay pregnant. And then I don't even understand that.
And like look to other people who like are married and doing it the Christian way and being like, that's your model. Like, maybe it's not.
Yeah, what happens?
Also, like these disgusting little caps. Like when you really think of how much money $188 is, like that's not rent anywhere in New York. It's nowhere.
For 3 people. That's like that's 3 actual fucking heartbeats. Y'all care so much about your heartbeat. Like that is 3 alive, living, breathing people that have to get that poor that then they can maintain a level of poverty because you can't go above it.
There was a story of a woman in Maine who had 4 children. She was working for $8 an hour. She got a 50 cents raise and they were like, no state aid for you.
Wow. But they'll build a man cave or an inseminator and say, play pool while we talk to you about parenting. And you can tune in and out as much as you'd like. 8 ball in any pocket, unload. What am I? I'm a parent, but this is a dope pool table. Like I'm like, honestly, it's just so gross. And it's like the oppression. I am stunned at the level, but also it kind of goes back to the story of Kansas, right? Where you're like, I don't think people know and make the connections between where their money goes and who votes for these things and what happens and how we got here. It's so much educating and it's just so much going backwards. And I think like this is the perfect time to bring in our guests because the going backwards is also the going forwards at this point. And our next guest is somebody who, as we navigate this post-Roe landscape, is somebody who navigated a pre-Roe landscape really successfully. And I know she's going to have tons of insights.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. Joining us today is Judith Arcana, a writer, performer, and a former member of the Janes, an abortion counseling service of the Chicago Women's Liberation Union. And this was a service that between 1968 and 1973 helped over 11,000 people, including low-income and people of color, get safe yet illegal abortions. In 1972, 11 of the Janes were arrested, and they were looking at 110 years of prison each. But fortunately, Roe legalized the right to abortion in 1973, and their charges were subsequently dropped. Volunteers like Judith, who worked in this pre-Roe underground, are featured in an HBO documentary aptly named The Janes, which is now on HBO and streaming on HBO Max. Please welcome Judith Arcana. Welcome, Judith. Thank you for joining us. So we saw the documentary and it is incredible. Can you explain a little bit about how the Janes came to be and how you personally got involved?
The Janes happened, I'll do the shortest of the short forms here of the history. The Janes happened because a college student who sought out an abortionist for the sister of a friend, continued to do that every now and then, occasionally for a few years after that first time, and then found that, guess what, the demand was great. And so she had a little meeting with other local feminists in Chicago, and some of them decided that they were going to do abortion care work and started what became known as the service. The long name is the Abortion Counseling Service of the Chicago Women's Liberation Union. Needless to say,
that's not a mouthful at all.
No, not a problem. Which is why we called it the service, or Jane. And it evolved from being that, find somebody who can do it, to learning more about it, to counseling, and then through a whole series of events, which you may or may not want to talk about on this podcast, learned how to do medical work as well, et cetera, et cetera. I joined, in terms of your question, in October of 1970 and was Janing, as we called it, for a couple of years. My personal life took me away about 6 months before the service shut down. So are there specifics that I'm leaving out here in terms of your question?
No. I think we'll get to all those specifics. So I think we'll probably jump around a bit, but one of the things that I found fascinating was once the Janes and the service was up and going, y'all were just like, it was illegal, but there was like ads in the alternative paper. And like, you were just like, how did you find the trust, or why was it safe to advertise in that way? I was so freaked out by that.
Yeah. Well, the short version, again, the short form is, it was different then. That's my favorite sentence these days. And of course, as you all know, the major difference was the atmosphere and knowledge base around abortion healthcare, which has been deliberately created over the last 5+ decades by the anti-abortion movement, plugged into the right wing in the United States, which of course brought them a lot more money and prominence, so that a way of thinking about abortion healthcare and a way of thinking about people who do that work was created and is now prominent in the United States, but it wasn't then. Of course, it was illegal. Everybody knew it was illegal. There were even people who thought it was bad or a sin. They were a very tiny percentage of the general public. And, everybody had remarks about that, like, think it's bad? Okay, don't do it. Don't like abortion? Don't have one. There were even bumper stickers that said stuff like that. The environment in which we worked was not without dangers. We were busted once, and who knows what would have happened if the Roe decision hadn't come down the following year. The bust was in May of 72, and Roe, as you know, was end of January 73. And in that time, we, at the 7 of us who were busted, and our lawyer were doing what most legal people refer to as the stall, having this happen and that she put in motions and blah, blah, blah. It went on for a long time. We could behave that way because even though the punishment, had we gone to trial and been found guilty, would have been 110 years in jail each, even though that was reality, the construct, the social, the political construct in which we were working did not promote the kinds of thinking that are so unfortunately and frighteningly common in these times. You could do what Lizz just referred to, the ads or the stickers up on telephone poles and stuff like that. If you called the Chicago Women's Liberation Union office and said, like a lot of people did, I heard that you folks know who might be doing abortions, they'd say, yes, call this number and ask for Jane. Bam, that was it. Which is wild. It's wilder now, believe me. It was not so crazy then. Or maybe it was and we just never got it. What can I say?
I mean, it's amazing. And, it just leads me to also, and I think it's hard to talk about the Janes in the top. Knowing that we know now, it's hard to not referential the world we're living in because the world was so different back then. But one of the things I also was thinking about with that, you advertise stickers, sure, call this number. I would love to just ask a little bit about the trust with each other. How did you develop this trust? It didn't seem like, and I love that the documentary was really honest about we weren't always the best of friends. We didn't matter. We all had a common goal. So how did you build that trust? And was there paranoia that you had to talk through?
I don't think there was ever paranoia. There was certainly disagreement, and we didn't very often talk it through. Because if stuff came up that was heavy duty in the realm that you are talking about, someone would say after no more than 5 minutes, listen, we've got to deal with the work here. And that's what we would do. That's what we would do.
Again, sounds so wild. Continue.
We had a list. There were all these people waiting. We had given them appointments, or we were about to give them appointments. It was not a place or a time. We had a weekly meeting for the years that the service existed. Every week, once a week, we met. That was when the index cards were passed around, when we would choose, I can do this one. Oh, this one's right near where I live, whatever. And the work was the subject. The work was the reason for being there. Other things, like our personal relationships, were certainly not of no interest at all. It just couldn't be done on Jane time. Jane time had to be spent on Jane business. And so that was what we did. People who joined the service and were in for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and didn't care for the whole whatever, for various reasons, not necessarily, but all kinds of reasons, just left. And people who thought this was a good way to spend their time, or it was okay not to deal with our personal relationships because what was on the table, the task, was what you joined up for. That's who we were.
And one thing I think is so cool about it is, and I love independent providers. Independent abortion providers are very different than larger Planned Parenthoods in the sense that they just boldly say abortion is 100% of what we do, because there is such a need for abortion that we don't have to dance around it. Why are we acting like we can do what should we be doing? Selling bread? We have to do this because every moment of our day is filled with appointments for people who need abortions. And I think that is that focus and that doing that. It's almost like a barn raising every day. It's like, we're here to raise a barn. We're going to do that barn. Shut your pie hole about anything else. It needs to be sturdy and we're doing it. And I love that.
That's a great comparison. I love it. I'm going to try to remember it so that I can use it. I'll quote you. I will definitely give you credit. But
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's right.
When I was watching the documentary, I found There was so much amazing. But with the guys, the doctors, particularly the one who was a construction worker, who like just kind of became an abortion doctor.
Spoiler alert to anyone.
Sorry, like really pissed me off. And so I love that at a certain point, you guys are like, wait, we can do this. So like
that guy can.
Did you ever feel like when you transitioned to that, I don't remember if you did individually, but did you ever feel like, oh my gosh, this is not safe? Like, or like, I shouldn't be doing this to people. Like, obviously you guys had very few to no complications. Like what you were doing was in fact a really safe service, but like, how did you get the confidence to do that? Or how would you know that you weren't doing it right?
Because we learned. I mean, it's not like we just walked in and said, hey, is this a curette? I'm going to use this. That is definitely not what happened. And that guy that everyone thinks is unusual, the construction worker, he was a great abortionist.
Mm-hmm.
He was absolutely, in the time that I was involved, the best, and who was not an MD. I mean, there were docs, and definitely some of them were excellent. But he was good. And I remember him teaching me. I remember things I learned from him, and then learned from others who had begun learning from him even before I began learning from him. So even though he is an unusual character in the movie, he was one hell of an abortionist, and he was good to the women that he was working with. He was kind and he was decent. I never saw him do anything that made me nervous or angry. I never heard about him doing anything. Now, I'm talking about during an abortion.
Yeah.
And who knows what he did on his days off,
Well, he's a man, so we can only assume.
You have it right there. He was different from the rest of us.
Well, Judith, I mean, and that was something for me in part of the film, when it was, you would learn that, people knew they didn't want to go to this person who was doing illegal abortions because maybe you would have to provide sexual favors, or maybe there was these other things, and I think those things, people don't think enough about what is involved when you are trying to access abortion or trying to help someone access abortion. When the criminal penalty is 110 years in prison, people can hold a lot over you.
Yes. And this is true actually of everything that, once something is illegal, but it's still wanted by the population for whatever reason, whether it's booze during Prohibition or abortions for the last 7,000 or 8,000 years. And if you're doing something that's illegal and you have to go, off the usual route, then you are literally at the mercy of the provider, whether it's this, that, or an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been, I'm going to say millions, because there have been so many abortions done, often without law, because in many parts of the world, abortion has been made illegal in the last 150 to 200 years. So the people who provide, whether they're good at it or not, now how do you know? Someone told you it might be okay. Your girlfriend, your sister-in-law, your mother, if you're lucky, takes you there. And what's going to happen? Very often, people who hold that power behave badly. That was not true of our guy. Another good thing about him.
I'm so glad that at least that was the context that you all were able to create for folks. Like, you saw an absence of, you created a healthcare system essentially. And there's some organizations out there. I'm with Midwest Access Coalition, and you all are like a founding entity. The Janes were, that showed, even though it wasn't referred to as practical support, like you all got that piece that sometimes you need to bring your child along and they need to be watched while you're getting medical care. You made sure people had rides. You were supporting local folks, and like, but I see the parallel so much between what orgs have been founded to do, and at least, while we had Roe, a lot of us could do it legally. Like you all were the trailblazers in that. And I'm wondering, what are some of the lessons that you've learned while being involved with the Janes that you think today's activists would also be helpful? Because So much of this we're being forced to circle and cycle back, but 49 years later.
Yeah.
Plus 49 plus.
Let's never forget the plus. Right.
Yeah.
Whatever numbers were.
I'm just like, the plus is when they got acquitted.
I think that, well, now there are still a number of Janes alive at the moment, as you can hear. I'm one of those. We're all either old or dead. That's the deal, because it was a long time ago. And I'm sure that every single one of us would answer this differently. So I don't want to say that I'm speaking for the group, but I am speaking about the group. It's hard to answer because I think the circumstances, which we've already talked about, are so different now that I wonder if what I might say as an elder in the world of illegal abortion, what I might say can in fact be of use. Young women ask me all the time. I tell them whatever I can think of, whatever I remember, whatever I truly believe, but I can't be positive that it's as valuable to them as I want it to be. I'm sure you know what I mean. And I think that for us, here's the part where I say every Jane would say it differently. What happened between me and the people I dealt with who came to the service for abortions was the most important part. How you relate to someone who needs something so desperately that that person is going to break the law and pay money to strangers. Fortunately, we did not charge the outrageous, but you know how common that is.
Yeah.
And so I think that for me, the answer is the relationship that we could fleetingly create between ourselves and the people who came to us for abortion health care was the most important thing, because they were in fear, they were in anxiety, even if they had a friend who had been to Jane and they knew that they could trust us, whatever, they had such a heavy burden emotionally when they showed up. And of course, when the work was being done. And I think that the way we learned how to behave and the way we learned about people, mostly female, but people with uteruses, are in the world was central. And every now and then, not very often, I can actually only think of one right now, a woman would join the service and she really wouldn't be appropriate. And that we weren't very good at how to deal with it. We did not have a human relations department, and we did the best we could. But I remember one in particular, she wanted to do the medical work, and pretty much everyone knew that would not be a good idea. I can't exactly remember what was said or how it was said. It was the most painful part of that season, shall we say, because we didn't know how to do it at the best level. What we were learning how to do as much as we could at the best level was deal with giving abortion health care, giving a woman, whether she was 9 weeks or 19 weeks pregnant, what she needed and helping her know how to deal with it and all of that. So tricky business, but the connection, really up and down the age. I always think of this one, my youngest person, she was 11. Her mother brought her, of course. And everyone from her to women in their 50s who had been in menopause, and as we used to say in the old days, got caught, meaning she thought it was over, and then, surprise, it wasn't yet. All of those decades in between those people, that's what I was learning. That's what we were doing. That's what was, for me, central. Yeah. I hope I answered that question. I tend to go off on that one a lot.
No, that's a great, it was
Such a
great.
beautiful answer.
This conversation is endless. And Judith, you and I have had the good fortune of having lunch and talking and hearing the stories. And hopefully you'll come back so that we can really just keep talking, because you continue your work and you're just an incredible person. And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for those good words. I happen to think you guys are pretty incredible too. It's pretty wonderful what you're doing. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Judith Arcana, for joining us today. Make sure to watch The Janes on HBO and learn more about Judith and her work at juditharcana.com.
Okay, it's time for 6 Degrees of Abortion, the podcast game taking the abortion podcast landscape by storm. Moji and I choose a news story from the week, seemingly unrelated to abortion, and Liz has 6 tries to try to make that abortion connection. Because isn't bodily autonomy truly connected to every issue? This week,
yes, it is.
This week, Emoji, I really love the story you find, because if I had a child, I would want them like this.
Oh my gosh, I know. I like have a child and I'm like, oh, how can I make this work? So this is about a week or so in Albertville, Alabama. There was a woman in a car and she looked and she saw a life-size kid dressed up as Chucky from Child's Play and freaked the fuck out. And you have to see the pictures. They're really hilarious because, yeah, it's just like a kid, a 5-year-old dressed up as Chucky, but like a really good costume and just walking around this Alabama neighborhood. So we would like you, Liz, in 6 Degrees or Less to link Chucky, the movie or the character, to abortion.
Well, easy. It was Marie Kahn who, when SB 8 dropped, the Texas bill, the bounty hunting bill, a year ago last September dropped. One of the co-sponsors of that bill is a Texas legislator named Briscoe Cain. And Briscoe Cain is a monster. And Marie dubbed him the fun-sized Chucky doll. Unfun-sized Chucky doll. And no shame to Chris Hayes, but he does look like a mini-me of Chris Hayes. Like if Chris Hayes had an evil miniature doppelganger, it's Briscoe Cain. So since Briscoe Cain was the author of the abortion bounty law, and Marie Kahn, my co-host and friend, dubbed him the fun-sized Chucky doll, I believe I did it in 2. Boom!
I feel like
I'm
that
willing
works.
to take that.
That's
I'm willing
fair.
to take that. Yeah, I'm
What do
accepting
you mean
that.
you're willing to take that?
We don't
you
have
want
Cat here to.
Why would you need any kind of intervention whatsoever? Are you fucking the Arizona Secretary of State? Are you going to call in? I think that I'm going to check these votes again. We're going to have to get some different electors on this. I'm unclear that Liz made a direct connection. It's
Well
my
done.
birthday, and even if I was far
That's true.
off, you could have fucking given it to me, but no. Let's transition out before I have more rage than I absolutely need to dig up for the 2 of you. So let's transition. It's time to hear about this week's sponsor, a new and delicious way to impose your unsolicited opinions on someone considering abortion.
Indeed, Liz. As you know, 1 in 4 people who can will have an abortion in their lifetime. That means it's pretty much guaranteed that someone you know is considering having an abortion right now. If you're looking for that perfect gift to insert your opinion about their choices, Fruit of the Womb Edible Arrangements is the ticket. It's the perfect gift to send to anyone you object to having an abortion. Each Fruit of the Womb edible arrangement is a hollowed out papaya stuffed with an apple carved into a fetus. It is a delicious symbol that says, be fruitful and multiply instead of becoming a baby-killing whore. So send a Fruit of the Womb edible arrangement to your favorite harlot today using the promo code STRANGEFRUIT. Bonus, if you order now, we'll throw in an embryo-shaped balloon that says, Mommy, when you press its umbilical cord. Fruit of the Womb edible arrangements. We remove the seeds so they won't have to.
Guys, and it's vegan.
And it's vegan. That was a missed opportunity for the Fruit of the Loom Edible Arrangements Company to not. It's also caffeine free.
Oh my gosh. Unlike last week's sponsor.
Yeah.
Hopefully, shellfish free unless we don't know something about their facilities.
I know, but that is very exciting. And also, that is our show.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much to Judith Arcana for joining us today. Make sure to watch The Janes on HBO and learn more about Judith and her writing at www.juditharcana.com.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to be a reliable info hub and a source of humor as we face some really hard times ahead. We are in this together. We gotcha. So a few action items. If you missed Operation Save Abortion, don't worry. You can watch all of the sessions, access the activity guide, and sign up for upcoming trainings at operationsaveabortion.com. Plus, we are dropping it as a 5-part pod series right here on August 26th. You can access the activity guide in the show notes of each episode.
That's right. Also, you want to support this fantastic podcast, write a review, give us 5 stars. It's the best way for our podcast to reach more people. And by doing so, you're helping more people learn about this assault on abortion access and what they can do to fix it. To keep up with all the latest repro news, follow us on social at Abortion Front, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And Facebook Live is edited by Remy DeTournay and is produced by Abortion Access Front.
Appearance alerts. AAF is tabling and speaking at Riot Girl Fest at Elsewhere Brooklyn on August 10th. Doors open at 8 p.m. and you can buy tickets at elsewherebrooklyn.com.
Marie, you might be tabling, right?
Maybe.
Maybe Maria's going to be
It might
there.
be a Marie opportunity.
I'm a
opportunity.
sucker for a free ticket.
Yes.
I mean, it's great. Yeah, come out. It's in the evening. Like, look
That's
at me.
right.
This is my after hours.
Marie After Dark.
Yes. And you can catch FBK Live from Netroots Nation, August 18th to the 20th. If you're going to come see Netroots in Pittsburgh, come see us do the show live and visit our booth. You can get details and schedules as well as sign up to attend virtually at netrootsnation.com.
Next week's guest, comedian, activist, and overall badass Margaret Cho will join us. Also, Karishma Oza, Director of Patient Services at the DuPont Clinic in Washington, D.C., which is one of the few clinics in the country providing all trimester abortion care, will also be here with us chatting about things.
That's a good show. Plus, we have a plug. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. So maybe on my birthday, you can give the gift of supporting our work. That's right. Join our Patreon for my birthday, and you'll support great content, and you get cool, exclusive FBK merch and experiences. The only way to get, and we have cool shirts and mugs and all this stuff. Like, the only way to get the FBK merch is to join our Patreon. So, and if you join our Patreon at a higher level, you can have experiences. Marie After Dark, maybe one of them. I'm not sure.
Marie After Dark over Zoom.
That's right. Marie After Dark over Zoom. That sounds very sexy. All pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. So, Roe is a crispy heaping pile of nothing. So together we can resurrect it from the ashes. So pledge at patreon.com/feminist buzzkills.
And we leave you with a man who shows his whole ass to everyone except women because they just may not be capable of understanding its greatness.
Why are we letting women teach us? Why are we letting women lead us? The Republican Party seems doomed to me because while we're kicking on the Democrats, let's kick on the Republicans for a minute. Most of their recent candidates are women. Right. And I'm thinking okay, Joe Biden, bad. A woman politician replacing him, not better. You kind of people are thinking I hope Joe Biden dies, and it's Kamala. You don't even know what the next Pharaoh's like. This Pharaoh could be worse.
Feminist Buzzkills Live, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. When BS is poppin', we pop off. New episodes drop Friday. If you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.